our panelists already in the room. They're trying to navigate that technology. And once we have their videos up and running, then we should be able to start our discussion. In the meantime, my name is Noeline Chiravo, and I'm your moderator for the session. I am a social entrepreneur. I run an organization, an incubator that supports marginalized youth. We typically support small and micro entrepreneurs that are working in low-income communities. And at the moment, our focus is on rescuing and supporting crisis and at-risk small businesses as a way of increasing their ability to survive and scale. And I look forward to learning more from our panelists, what they're doing, but also from the chat box in regards to what is working when it comes to supporting youth-led initiatives in your country, in your context, and what can we learn from each other that we can take back to our own projects. Noha, you are very welcome, and you are joining us from Cairo. Esther and Lucia, can you hear me? Are you able to share your videos, and are you able to activate your audios as well? Esther and Lucia are two panelists, and as they settle in, I'll start us off with a quick question, with a discussion in regards to youth-led initiatives. What is one of your biggest challenges? I want to assume that we are working in this space. If you're working with young people and young innovators, young entrepreneurs, what have you found to be one of the biggest challenges, more so in the face of COVID? Share with me what you found to be one of your biggest challenges in our chat box in regards to supporting young people, more so in the face of COVID. Anyone? Some of the challenges you've encountered in regards to supporting young entrepreneurs or innovators in the face of COVID, as we wait for our panelists to settle in. Thank you, Noha. Noha says mobility for young people is an issue during these times, especially if they reside in remote areas. I totally agree, and that's something that many of us can relate with. And then, Patricia, you're saying the youth have had the need to drop out of school and help at home, either working or taking care of their family members. That's very true, Patricia. And yes, the interesting thing about both submissions is the fact that this is not about a particular country, but this is a global movement. Or we could say some of the trends we are seeing or the shifts that are happening in regards to our youth-led initiatives. And typically when we think about youth-led initiatives, oftentimes, depending on the context where you're working from, there's the analogy and youth are very flexible. However, in the face of COVID, we have seen a trend that affects both young people and entrepreneurs. And the test for resilience is something that we are all dealing with. And so one of the things that we would love to discuss in this session is how we as entrepreneur support organization or business development support service providers are actually pivoting in the face of COVID. And I look forward to hear what our panelists have to say about that. Annabelle, do we have progress in regards to getting Esther and Lucia online. Thank you, Annabelle. Ladies, I really apologize. We are having issues getting a panelist to activate their videos and their audios. However, they are already in the room. And I'll just keep the conversation going for us. I was saying, so the trends have actually shifted in regard to the test for resilience and the test for methodology. So some of the principles are very valid. I'm based in Kampala, Uganda, and some of the things that have worked over the last couple of years been tested in this 1 year of COVID, and you can hardly hear me. Beatrice, is that better? Is my audio better? Thank you. Yeah, so as we think about pivoting in regards to methodology and approach in the face of COVID, one other question that comes to mind is a poll I actually have for us that I will just, I would love for us to share. Thinking about what do you think youth-led initiatives need the most to thrive? Are we able to see the poll? Next to the chat, there's a poll, and I'd like you to take that poll for me, if you can see it. We basically have four options. What do you think, and you just need to choose one, what do you think youth-led initiatives need the most to thrive, in your opinion? Thank you, Patricia. Please take the poll, and I'll share the results in a few when everybody has taken the poll. All right. Have we all had an opportunity to respond to the poll? Let me see what results I have. Okay. I don't know why I can't see my results. All right, let's see. Show results. I'm unable to pull up our poll results. That's very interesting. Thank you so much, Noha. That's very interesting. So no one has chosen financial problem. That's interesting. And the highest vote is for connection and network. I'm also now curious to hear, why do we think the biggest need for young people right now is connection and network? Just share with me your thoughts in the chat box. What do you think, according to our poll, why is it that connections and network is coming up as the top rated need for young people at the moment? Or youth-led initiatives, really? What are the reasons behind this choice, or the reason why we voted the way we voted? Okay, know how you think that connections and networks help the other components. So if they're in the right spaces, connecting with the right people, then they'll access the finance, they'll get the capacity building, and they'll be able to get the mentoring and coaching they need. Okay, that's quite interesting. When you have good connections, you can access better financial opportunities, mentors, and etc. I totally agree with you. And oftentimes, funding is just 5 people away. So it depends on who you're talking to and who you're connecting with. I totally agree with you, Noha. Thank you so much. Beatrice, you're saying lack of platforms where young people can create the connections and the networks. So, Beatrice, what I hear you say is the fact that young people need the connections and the networks, but they lack the access to the platforms, or we don't have the platforms that are facilitating these connections. Please help me clarify on that. The lack of knowledge about the platform. So the platforms are there, but the young people are not aware about where to find this kind of information. So how do we bridge this information gap? How do we create the awareness about platforms that are already existing that young people can leverage, but they don't seem to be leveraging them? How do we bridge this gap between the platforms that have, that are focusing on building the connections and the networks to the young people that need them, but for some reason they're not able to access them? Is it an issue of internet? Is it an issue of location? Or it's just a matter of them not knowing at all? And if it's not knowing, then how do we help them bridge that gap? Thank you, Nora. That makes two of us. I'm also eager to hear what other people think in regards to how do we bridge this, which seems like a knowledge gap for young people that want to access platforms that are already existing, but for some reason they just don't know how to get there. Would love to hear from you, ladies. Geneva, Patricia, Mena. What do you think? How do we bridge the knowledge gap for young people that are trying to get into the right spaces, into the right networks, but for some reason they are not able to get there? How do we bridge that knowledge gap for them? They have access to internet, but the information is not accessible. Nora, you seem to put a bigger twist into this whole conversation. So it's not even internet. So the info is not accessible. I would like to unpack that as well. Okay. No access to technology. That's why my things, all right. Training and support by other organizations. So, all right. Thank you, Mai. That's a very practical perspective that you're bringing to this discussion. Well, Asha says this is where mentoring comes in. People with experience start to share knowledge to young people so they can get the knowledge of how to start to integrate in a way that they can be seen and be effective. So this is quite an interesting discussion because Noha thinks it's not the internet. So probably it's not the technology. The information is not accessible. Noha, I'd be curious to hear what accessibility in this context would mean for you. When you say it's not accessible, is it the language barrier? Is it what does that look like? And then my thinks it's actually the technology. So they're very interesting dimensions. One person says it's not the internet, it's a technology. Again, you could help us unpack what technology is in that context, because it may not just be the internet, but what does technology embody in this context from where you're coming from. And I definitely like Asha's perspective about mentoring, because then a mentor can fill the role of hand holding a young person, introduce them to networks, introduce them to the people they know that otherwise they wouldn't have been able to navigate. Great, thank you, Noha. So accessibility in that the language is not accessible because of a language barrier in one way or another. That's quite interesting. And for it's a mismatch between the skills gained at vocational training and the skills needed in the world of, I think you meant the world of work, not the world of work. I totally agree with you. Thank you, ladies, for the discussion. And so one thing that we're realizing is, for those of you that came in late, we did a poll and the highest score was around connections and networks. Then we moved into the discussion of how do we help young people access the connections? And we moved to a point where we realized that the platforms for connecting are there. The young people are not accessing them. And now we realize that it's not even about the internet. It's about the language barrier. And the language barrier, it doesn't mean that the person that can't read or write. It may just be some of the jargons we have adopted in the social impact space that our young people don't understand. And then on the other hand, Mai says it could be the mismatch between the skills needed. So as they come into these spaces, they might also be ill prepared. And I would like to pick up on the role of mentoring and coaching as a way of building, hand-holding young people and literally working them into the spaces where they need, so they should thrive. So about the skills mismatch, I love this discussion because we're coming from different parts of the world, and yet this is the same challenge we're facing in Uganda, in Africa, in East Africa. That skills mismatch is a big challenge. We have young people that are graduating, looking for jobs. We have employers that are looking for employees, and there's a mismatch between both expectations. Even in the entrepreneur space, sometimes we have seen that investors are looking for certain qualities that some of our young people don't have. And just before we dive into that discussion, let me see what Maya is saying. Yes. Yes, I know about Motive. Thank you, Maya. Motive is like a game changer, definitely. We've had a lot of hubs and co-working spaces that typically have been focusing on tech businesses or tech-driven businesses. But Motive is the first co-working space that we're having within Uganda that is focusing on non-tech businesses, and that is a huge game changer. And I would like to hold it there and bring back this discussion about the skills mismatch. When a young person has gone through the education system, they have graduated, they have the qualifications, quote unquote, at least in Uganda, West Africa. They have the qualifications, they have the papers to say, yes, this person has graduated. But then as they get into the workplace, they realize that this is not what is needed. As people who are supporting young people, as people who are working with innovators and entrepreneurs and the job seekers, how do we then help a person? How do we then navigate that place of transition? What do we need to do, or what has worked in helping young people successfully navigate from just a place of being a graduate to a place of being market ready or job ready? What are some of the things that you have seen work in your context? Partnerships across the sectors. That's quite interesting. Definitely, yes. I totally agree with you, Maya. And yet, thinking about it also makes it feel like this cross-sector partnership can seem like a very big mountain that sometimes you just don't know where to start from. You don't know how do I even start to navigate. How do we get all these players on board? I'd be curious. For example, maybe you give us a context of how the YMCA or YWCA has navigated this place. Mai, you can share a little bit on how you have navigated that. And I'm also curious to hear from the other ladies. How do we build relevant or successful transition interventions for young people as they come from school, getting into the job market? Any perspectives on that? Okay, Noha, that's interesting to hear. In North Africa, some institutions are specifically designed for. So would that be like a gap year program or after school, transition program? Would that be an apprenticeship program? Noha, if you could just give a name, what do those institutions or programs look like? Thank you, Patricia. I like what you just said. The workplace must see the young people as contributors and listen to their ideas in a no condescending manner. I like that. I like that. And it's interesting talking about listening to young people, because sometimes when you're taking on young people, that I don't know what it's like in other countries. When we have a huge gap between the hierarchies and the chains of command. Sometimes that can also be a challenge. And yet, I totally hear you in regards to this is the way we need to go. Thank you so much, Patricia. The outreach to fresh grads and the design trainings according to their needs. Thank you, Noha, for that clarification. And then they link them to working opportunities. Ma, you say it's a collective responsibility among stakeholders to uplift the quality of vet, building networks through social media, and building the bridge between talent and sponsors. Awesome, awesome. These are awesome inputs and reflections. Thank you so much, ladies. And I agree to the fact that if we are going to build a system that works, then everybody needs to be involved. So all the stakeholders have got to be involved. They've got to buy into the concept. And I think a critical point that Patricia brought out is the culture and maybe the mindset shift that has to shift from a place of young people know nothing to young people are contributors to employees are contributors and not implementers. I think that's a big shift. I don't know if it works in your country, but in Uganda, in East Africa, in Africa, this is a shift that we need to have in the workplace where everybody is seen as a contributor and not just an implementer, and not just having a small team of quote unquote contributors and then the rest of that, the 80% being implementers. Right? Thank you, Mena. I like that. The fact that young people are being engaged before they get into the workplace, and that helps them become more ready. Thank you, Asha, for sharing your personal experience. Okay. So, Asha, you are pro mentoring and being open to new ideas. It's a win win because one brings knowledge and experience, and the other brings creativity and new ideas. Absolutely. My, that's awesome. I love the synergy. I love the collaboration. And we all can see that if we're going to create that kind of social impact, if we're going to scale the social impact that is being generated and led by young people, then we need to build an ecosystem culture, is how I like to look at it. And possibly just backtrack a little bit. Why are we even so passionate about youth-led initiatives? Because youth make up the biggest population. I like to say youth are not the future, they are the present, they are the future, they are the today and the tomorrow. And so thinking about, I like to think about it from the analogy of parenting. Every parent will do everything in their power to create that environment for their child to grow, to create, every mother will want to create that environment of safety for their child to be able to grow. And so the aspect of ownership, I feel like for us to want to go the extra mile and, build the webs and build the bridges and build all these connections, we've got to, first of all, care on the young people like they are our young people. I come from a culture that says the young people, not our young people. It's you are there and we are here. So the mindset shift and the culture shifts and the culture dimensions in regards to how we look and embrace young people. And then two, then we can begin to weave the system. I'd like to for us to discuss a little bit about weaving this ecosystem that then supports and nurtures our young people to thrive. In regards to building partnerships and collaborations and strengthening the ecosystem, what is working and what is not working? All right. What are some of the key things that are fundamental in nurturing the partnerships that we want to build and we want to create? All right. Yes, know how we need to take responsibility for our young people instead of blaming them. We can't blame them. They are our young people. Just like a mother, you own up and know that if your child comes up with ill manners, it's not, yeah, it's partly their responsibility, but bigger part is your responsibility because we didn't do that nurturing. And so we can't expect young people to come out in a way we haven't nurtured them to be. Thank you so much for that, Noha. Um, okay, university students should have the space to experience the work-life experience. Wow. Then I would also be curious to hear the university life is kind of very hectic. Yes, it's very demanding. But within the some of the university systems, at least within the Ghana system, there's what we call job placements or internships that are basically mandatory. And what I've noticed, I've actually worked with some of the interns. What I've noticed is that many times when the young people have these placements, they do it as a course unit. They do it to check it off their list so they can graduate. So again, how do we, the fact that the person is put in a job environment or they're put in, a learning environment that gives them exposure into work experience, how do we ensure they're actually learning? How do we ensure they're getting the most out of that experience? That's a question in my mind because in Uganda we have the internship placement, the apprenticeship, but it's still not getting us the results. So how do we ensure that even with all these great programs, we are still able to get the results that we want? I agree, Mena, that giving young people the space and experience, that space to truly experience new things is essential in creating the partnerships. I totally agree with you on that. And so I would like to also hear how do we ensure that, because creating the space is one thing. It's like putting up the infrastructure. It's like taking your child to school and paying up the tuition and ensuring they have a stationery and all the books. But how do you ensure that the child actually learns? So that's the question we're asking here. How do you ensure that even with all the partnerships, even with all these spaces, the young people actually get the value that we would want them to get at the end of the day? Sorry, ladies, my network just got disconnected. Thanks, Noha, I'm back. Thank you. I'll just pick up from where we stopped. So giving the space, we talk about so post-learning interactive assessment. Thank you, Mena. I seem to be jumping on a lot of the thought lines that you bring up because, and again, it's things that, and this is what the discussion is all about. For us to rethink, I like the aspect of post-learning interactive assessment, and that brings me to my other point that I wanted us to discuss. When you talk about assessment or impact measurement, the question is, are we even using the right metrics? The metrics or the standards that we are using to measure job readiness? Because the assumption is that when a person graduates, they are job ready. But are we measuring the right things? The exams or the systems we are using, are they measuring the right things? One of my frustrations with young people is that they come out with great grades, but then they can actually not perform because a lot of our assessments, so in regards to their exams, they pass highly. They have like a second class upper degree and you know, they have all their grades in check, but they actually cannot get the job done. And so the pressure is around exams within the Ugandan context. So what are we measuring when we say this person is being prepared for the work market? What are some of the metrics we need to start looking at for us to actually be sure that we are building the impact we want to create? Okay, Asha, I see your point. When someone is heard and given the respect, they feel valued, and they want to impact the world more positively. So, uh, bending towards the qualitative, data analysis. I see that. Oh, thank you, Patricia. I like that shift. Patricia says there's a shift between from testing to competence based. I definitely love that. Unfortunately, in Uganda or within the East African region. Thank you, Mena. Yes, what are some of the metrics for impact assessment as we talk about empowering young people to be sustainable, to be scalable, to create that impact? What are some of the impact assessment metrics we need to be looking at in this space of youth empowerment or supporting young people? Mai, would you like to share some of your impact metrics from your organization, if you don't mind, that is? But all of us are very welcome to, share whatever. What are you tracking as you support young people? Beyond just the academics, what else are you tracking to be sure they're actually ready or not? Actually, I hear you. I think the competence-based approach would definitely be very, very welcome in Uganda too. I would be happy for that. Okay, Ma, you're looking at diligence, effectiveness, performance of the task at hand with great talent and high quality in product design. All right. So there's a little bit of what I hear. There's attitude. You're looking at their attitude. You're looking at, I don't know whether that would be commitment, but also the quality of work would have something to do with the technical ability to get it done, their creativity, and their innovation. Okay, that's interesting. Exposing students to solving real world problems using skills as collaboration, critical thinking, public speaking. I absolutely agree with you, Patricia. Behavior change. Beatrice, yes, that's very, very valid. Behavior change is a crucial and unfortunately sometimes it's also one of those things that takes time and a process to articulate, just like mindset change. It takes a while for it to get articulated. Focus group with close follow-up, all right? All right, workshops involving real world problems. I think we've seen a couple of those with some of our university students, especially in developed countries, trying to work with real projects in developing countries, and helping them consult on particular points. I've been part of those collaborations, and they tend to work very well. And it's a win-win because the people in the developing countries get exposure that they wouldn't have gotten, and then the students also get real life experience working on real issues. So that does make a real difference. Key competences between Norway and Uganda. Okay, that's interesting, Mai. Thank you, Esther. It's looking at the level of knowledge attainment. So again, assessing how much they have been able to learn through a session. That's very powerful. The ability to work in teams. So looking at the ability to work in teams. So we're still looking at some of the impact metrics. Co-create, the ability to co-create together with other people. Problem solving has come through. Creativity and innovation has also come through. Empathy or empathetic attitudes. Okay, creative thinking, innovative processes are important, I agree. Growth mindsets. All right. Great. I absolutely love the ideas, and I'm in total agreement. So one thing we're agreeing on is the fact that if young people are going to be ready for the job market, if they're going to be ready, they need to experience reality. What does the market or what does the business world look like before they even graduate? And so we are agreeing that we need to create or prototype the real world in the learning environment so that they begin to experience and work on real issues. I love the shift from theoretical knowledge to practical understanding of a real situation, because that has been a gap, at least within our context, that has been a huge gap. I'm also loving the idea of creativity, because sometimes creativity or innovation comes at a high cost depending on the work environment they're in. But if they learn to create in a safe learning space, then they can actually make the mistakes that they need to make for them to learn and get better at what they're doing. All right, Mai, you have a very interesting perspective here that says they copy the teacher in product design classes, and there's not been space for the student to think creative and create from within. That is very true. And probably that will bring us to second last discussion around the curriculum. So we have talked about some of the metrics that we are tracking, and how we can get young people more involved, create these spaces. And we have agreed that creating the space is one thing, but also now nurturing the attitude, the behavior change that comes with embracing that kind of space. And the aspect that is coming in is then the curriculum. How are we designing? Because maybe we have the spaces, the young people are adapting in how we design the curriculum. A lot of the curriculum is being pre-designed for the entrepreneur to adopt. So young people walk into an engineering class and there's a pre-designed assignment, and the facilitator or the lecturer is expecting a certain outcome, is expecting a certain answer. And that in its own way kills the ability for this young person to think beyond the framework of that assignment. So as we prepare young people to thrive, as we prepare young people to excel, how do we change that? I see a frustration, Mai, that the curriculum is outdated. Changing the curriculum is going to be a process. What can we begin to do differently in our curriculum, in how we are approaching curriculum design? All right, let me see. So there's not enough space. Okay, self-learning environments where failing is part of creating. Would that mean, because I feel like a self-learning environment is something that would mean there is no preset right answer. So a young person can go, it can end up whichever way. And in the academic space, sounds very dangerous. There's no preset standard. But how do we navigate that? Let me see what people say. Human-centered design, absolutely. We need to embrace a human-centered design approach in our curriculums, and then the syllabus needs to be changed. Okay, you agree? Okay, so you're advocating for the fact that if we can't change the curriculum at the national level, we should be able to change it within the local spaces. So that comes down to how we design our programs for young people. Can really stick for the learners. Yes, Asha, I hear you on that. The assessment do stick for the learners when it has an element of option and preference. Absolutely. So as we talk about creativity and innovation, we need to think beyond just creating the space, just getting the learners in and checking off the boxes to say, okay, this is what we're tracking, covered. But then I think what has come out clearly is a human-centered design. Can we begin to focus? Can we pivot and reevaluate our programs, even in the face of COVID, to critically think, how do we bring the youth at the center of the design process, that they are part of the design process, they are part of articulating what are the milestones, what do the milestones look like, what do the outcomes look like from their perspective, and that takes a lot of effort. And as we wrap up this discussion, talking about survival of youth initiatives, a couple of things that we have talked about. We have talked about the system of understanding what the young people need, the notion that young people need money, capacity building. We realize that connection and network. So the spaces building self-learning environments for young people, for them to think and create, co-create with their peers, then rethinking our metrics beyond just the academics to being able to see what is the marketplace looking for. Actually, the quickest way for us to get the metrics is to go to the people that are going to employ these people and say, what are you looking for? What are the trends? What are the shifts that you're looking for? And then bring that back to the design process as we work with the young people. And then empowering young people to deal with real life situations, not just theoretical situations, but empowering them to deal with real life situations in the learning journey. And then lastly, we need to think about the curriculum and tailoring it not for the young people to pass, but for them to come out competent. I think that's a critical thing for us to think about. And I'll read the last comments. Okay, Ma, you say the learning outcome from the syllabus should have a theory of change approach. I love that. That's something for us to take away and also think about as we evaluate our own programs and what we're doing with young people. Implement the SDGs, yes, adopt the SDGs in the curriculum, in the program design for them to begin to think around SDGs. I totally agree with that. In order to begin changing the education system, we need educators to begin their own transformation. Oh, I feel like clapping for that one. Thank you so much, Patricia. Thank you so much, because that is where we're going to wrap it up and say, as we talk about empowering young people, we cannot be for them what we are not. It's going to start with us. As we talk about the mindset change, the culture shift, as we talk about all these things, the question is, where are you at in the process of this shift? Are you shifting? Are you making the necessary changes? Because if the mindset doesn't change, if our approach to empowerment doesn't change, then all these things are not going to give us the results that we want to see. Thank you so much, ladies, for being part of this session. Sorry about the technical niches. Our panelists were on, but some did on board. I've loved facilitating the conversation, and I'm happy to stay in touch. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. There's a lot of wisdom in this room, and you've given me so much to think about, even as I leave this session. Thank you so much, Mai. Thank you, Mena. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Noha. Thank you. Thank you, Esther. It's been an amazing discussion, and thank you so, so much. Enjoy the rest of the other sessions. Thank you. Thank you, Patricia. think that's it from the box. Thank you so much. Yes, yes, you can send me an email. Let me put my email in the chat box right now. Thank you, Mai. I'll be more than happy to hear from you. More than happy to hear from you. Thank you, Mai. I am blessed to have encountered you, and it's exciting to know that you're already doing some work in Uganda. So definitely, I'd love to hear about some of the projects that you're working on in Uganda. That would be very exciting for me, and I look forward to staying connected with you. Thank you so much.